Welcome to the #1 college football show. I am your host, RJ Young. Thank you for watching. Wherever you get your podcast, listening wherever you get your podcast, Fox Sports app, YouTube, you know what it is. Probably seen this on social, but we are doing an emergency pod because on Wednesday, we got the big noon kickoff schedule, and there are some doozies already locked and loaded for the 2023 season. And no surprise to me, but perhaps a surprise to you, Big Noon is going to start week 1 with Colorado at Texas Christian, which means that Deion Sanders and the national runner-up will play each other at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. That would be noon Eastern Time, hence Big Noon. But also following that, we're going to have Nebraska at Colorado week 2 for Big Noon kickoff, and that 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon window once again, which means the first 2 games Colorado plays in the Prime era will be on Big Fox broadcast television. And this is wild because it's been about 30 years since we could talk about Colorado being on national television to open the season, since basically they won a national championship in 1990. So we're going on more than 30 years. And the reason for this is quite honestly, Deion Sanders. And there's been lots said and will be said about Coach Prime and what the Buffs may or may not do. We've spoken about it here on this show. You know that they set a season ticket sold out day, right, in April. You also know that a game at Colorado to open the season, right, Nebraska at Colorado, it's going to cost you about $470 to get in the door, right? For perspective there, it's going to cost you about $87 to get in the door for week 1 at Georgia. That is how big a deal Coach Prime has turned out to be at Colorado. And since it is one of the, if not the most dominant offseason storyline in the sport, very cool that Fox has both of those games, which means you're going to get to hear Gus and Joel call both of those games. And I'm sure that knowing what we know about those guys in the booth, they're going to have a whole lot of fun with Coach Prime on the sideline. But let's not be coy about this. Texas Christian is coming off of playing in the national championship game. And after getting beat 65-7, they would like to show everybody that it wasn't no fluke. I'm interested in this because Chandler Morris is going to be behind quarterback. Shedeur Sanders going to be at quarterback. You're going to see 2 of the better head coaches of the last 2 years, regardless of division, going head-to-head. That's week 1. Week 2, you got Matt Rule, who is a program builder, if ever there was one, making his debut on the road against what is the biggest story in the sport. And then later on throughout the year, we're going to have lots of other Big Noon matchups, but there are a couple more that I want to circle for you. We got, my goodness, Texas Christian at Oklahoma is going to be the day after Thanksgiving at 11 a.m. on a Friday in Fort Worth. And this one is one that Oklahoma has circled the day after they got beat down last year at home. And I mean, before that beat down by Texas Christian, who again acquitted themselves by making the national championship game, it'd been 8 years since Texas Christian had beaten Oklahoma, and they have had the losing end of this for some time. I'm sure Oklahoma would love to get one back on the way out to the SEC, and that game might also be about playing in the Big 12 championship. If you're just looking at the Big 12, which is really, really thick, 1 through 12 this year. But I think right there at the top, Texas Christian, Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas State, all those teams should be vying for the Big 12 championship by October. And then by November, we'll get a little bit shaken of the tree. And then we got week 11, Michigan at Penn State. Now, I've been critical about what Michigan's non-conference schedule is going to look like. You don't care. Neither does the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. So I'm going to leave it alone. But if you're looking at this, you see that Maryland is on the schedule for Michigan. And then they basically got to go up against Penn State as their first prove-it game. Prove to us that you are a college football playoff and Big Ten title contender in week 11 against the Penn State team that I think could be the best Penn State team we've seen since Micah Parsons was wearing number 11 at Beaver Stadium. That's all the way back to 2016, and that man was a destroyer of worlds. But that defense does not really have any holes to fill in it. They've got dudes at every level, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, and then offensively, Drew Allar is one of the premier talents in the Big Ten this year and making his debut as the starter in 2023. He's going to get help from a dude that I have been following for some time. You've been following for some time. You listen to the show. And Nick Singleton. Katron Allen's also back there. They're getting Keandre Lambert-Smith back. And They're adding Dante Cephas, who caught 82 balls for over 1,200 yards at Kent State a couple years ago. Kent State, where Sean Lewis was head coach. Sean Lewis, who is the offensive coordinator at Colorado. Very excited about that game and what that could mean for the Big Ten championship, because right now it feels like Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State will be vying for that spot in that game. And then, of course, to end this really wild and cool 2023 season, get Ohio State, Michigan, which, is going to be on Fox, which, is always one of the biggest games of the year. And Ryan Day needs a win. Doesn't matter that I think it's asinine that Ryan Day's job is actually up for debate after being something like losing 6 games since being the head coach at Ohio State and having made the national championship game just, 2 years ago, and producing first round quarterbacks like, Lincoln Riley produces first round quarterbacks. But with Michigan having won back-to-back games, both at home and at the shoe, there have been lots of people that have come back to what it really is about at Ohio State. And it's not necessarily winning national championships or even the Big Ten championship. It's, did you beat Michigan? And then did you win the Big Ten championship? And then did you win a national championship? They got very used to beating the hell out of Michigan in the Brady Hoke and Jim Harbaugh eras. And all of a sudden, Jim Harbaugh has found a recipe that works in Ann Arbor and works specifically for them. Very excited for that game and what it could mean, not the least of which, again, could be about what Ryan Day's future at Ohio State looks like. All right, I know it was a short emergency podcast, but we did want to talk a little bit about these games as they have just come out. And, we'll be talking about these games probably week by week, especially as we get closer and closer to the college football season. All right. Thank you so much for joining us here. My thanks, as always, to our lead producer, Tyler Wojak. Our senior producer is Catherine Donnelly. Our director is Kyle Holly. Our social media maven is Javion Duncan. Our production assistant is Kiera Santana. And our lead of screening is Jack Coakley. I'm RJ. We'll see y'all on Friday. Doses. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.